In the world of combat sports, there are few things more feared than a foul. Most dreaded of the fouls could be a toss-up for some, but one that no one wants to catch is the dreaded low blow. If for some reason you have to ask what a low blow is, it's that illegal below-the-belt hit, usually to the groin, that can turn a champ into a crumpled mess, rack up fouls, or end a night early. Usually a low blow is something people detest seeing in the cage, but on one specific night, for one specific fight, it was not quite the worst thing ever. This will take some explaining, so let's introduce the fighters. Keith Hackney, better known as the Giant Killer, born April 15, 1958 in Roselle, Illinois. Think blue-collar America. Man, the kind of place where you either work hard or you get left behind. This kid is throwing punches at 11, boxing, wrestling, the whole deal. By 13, he's deep in Taekwondo, snagging a second-degree black belt, then Tang Soo Do, another second-degree black belt. By 1990, he's a fourth-degree black belt in White Tiger Kempo Karate. The man's dedication and love for martial arts couldn't be questioned even from a young age. Hackney was essentially a real-life Cobra Kai character. Given the environment of the early 90s, it's easy to wonder if maybe he was just some guy who paid the right fees to get the belts. Luckily, he's not just some McDojo goof zoned out on chi trying to throw you some Ishida Kim pamphlets after class.
Remember, I am the first. I am the one. I am the ninja.
He's the real deal. To pay the bills, Keith was running a heating and air conditioning business, fixing furnaces, honing his skills by day when he was able to. Normal dude by day, soon to be MMA pioneer by night. It's 1994, and the UFC is this crazy underground fight club, barely legal. No weight classes, no rounds, just two dudes locked in a cage till someone's unconscious or crying for mama. Keith's 36, right? Most guys are slowing down. But he sees an ad in a martial arts magazine saying, "You want to fight? Call us." That's all our guy needed to hear. Art Davie, the old head of the UFC, rings him up a week before UFC. A competitor had pulled out of the event, and Keith jumped at the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Keith Hackney. I train in the art of Kempo Karate, and I'm here to test my skills in the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
His first fight, Emmanuel Yarbrough, a 6'8", 616-pound titan of a man. Yes, 616 pounds. Keith's around 6 feet tall, 200 pounds soaking wet. September 9th, 1994, Charlotte, North Carolina. They locked the cage behind these two. Within 2 minutes, one man would break his hand, be tossed from the cage,
and through the other cage. The gates have broken open. That's the first time that has happened.
Re-enter the cage with a torn shirt like an action movie hero, and swing at the giant until the big man could take no more.
He just gave in. Emmanuel just tapped out.
But part of the very appeal of ultimate fighting is the lack of regulation. Unlike boxing, for example, there are no weight classes to evenly match up the contestants. In one contest, it raised this question: how do you defeat a 616-pound sumo wrestler?
Unbelievable. World's largest athlete.
Manny Tiny Yarbrough, at 6 feet 8 inches, can manhandle men his size in the sumo ring. He's ranked #1 among American amateur sumo wrestlers. But he was not prepared for what he faced.
Please welcome Keith Hackney!
Keith Hackney, a black belt karate expert, was just 5'11" and was outweighed by 400 pounds. It was like David and Goliath in the ring.
This guy was just so huge.
Manny's plan was to sit on Hackney with every ounce he had, and he had plenty for the uncharging Hackney.
When I worked his legs, it was like hitting a brick wall.
Keith came out, he ran up on me and brushed me, and he jumped up and slapped me in the temple, which was totally unexpected, and I fell. I mean, I didn't think that someone would be able to do that.
And he grabbed me and jumped on top of me and started beating me in the head.
Gotta be quick. He's gotta be quick. He should get out of there.
He threw me through the gate.
I think if I was able to apply a chokehold, I may have been able to win the match, but I just lost sight of what I was supposed to do.
That's a big deal. 600 pounds. Pushes him out of the ring. Get it on.
But what was going through my mind was to win and get out of there in one piece.
He went down again, started punching me, and I just didn't have any more left.
Watch now, and you'll see what many opponents of the sport fear most. Manny is beaten into submission by a succession of hammering strikes to the upper neck and the base of the skull, blows that could result in paralysis in some situations. Hackney broke his hand during this fight. Manny finally taps out on the mat, signaling defeat and giving up.
Emmanuel Yarborough gets $1,000 for his effort.
It's just a matter of time in ultimate fighting before one opponent damages the other very severely, up to and including death within the ring. I would expect that to happen probably from a broken neck or a fractured larynx.
Keith Hackney had just shown what he was capable of, and this was just the beginning. Joseph Hyungmin Sun, born November 22, 1970 in Gwangju, South Korea. His life starts off normal enough. Family moves to California when he's a toddler, and he finds himself in the land of sunshine and opportunity. He's stocky, scrappy, and eventually gets into wrestling. Early on, Joe would get in with some questionable crowds, but he would also find himself tied to some very influential and powerful people. He's got this vibe. Short, thick, built like a damn fire hydrant, and he's got dreams, right? Starts dabbling in martial arts, claims he's a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo, invents some bullshit called Jon Sudo, which was somewhat common in early MMA. As far as his legit credentials, no one's buying it. But Joe's got hustle and never let a lack of ability get in his way. He attaches himself to some big names like Kimo. As fate would have it, we see Joe-san at UFC 3 as well, but in Kimo's corner as Kimo's hype man? Coach? Who knows why he's there, but he's there doing something. Even though he's not fighting, simply being in proximity to Kimo makes him a pretty big deal at the time compared to other fighters. This would lead to plenty of people being interested in seeing him fighting in the cage. With UFC 3 in the books, why not get ready for UFC 4? When the time comes for UFC 4, a match is set. Hackney is going to fight Joe-san.
Hi, my name's Joe-san. I'm from Huntington Beach, California. The Lord said, not by my might or my strength, but with my spirit, said the Lord. You guys will see the Spirit of the Lord of Jesus Christ tonight.
During this era, it is no weight classes, no gloves, just fighting with minimal rules. Joe-san's appearance in Kimo's corner was enough to get many curious, and Hackney's performance at UFC 3 is the stuff of legend. On December 16, 1994, Joe's big moment happened.
The strange mixture of religion and fighting, I don't understand it.
Frankly, Jim, neither do I.
Neither do you.
He's 5'4", 237 pounds, looks like a meatball with legs. Joe's billing himself as a Joe-san do master, whatever the hell that is, and steps in outweighing Hackney by 30 pounds. Fight starts, Joe tackles him, grabs his guillotine, looks for a good moment, but it goes south very quickly for Joe. Hackney would position himself to get enough distance between himself and Joe's body to begin firing off rapid punches to Joe's groin. This is probably the most blatant examples of low blows ever, but it wasn't against the rules at the time. People still argue about it. Was it dirty? Was it fair? Rules were no biting, no eye gouging. That's it. He later made comments about how it's easy to look back now and think about it being illegal, but in the moment, it was all about survival. These groin strikes would be the beginning of the end of the bout. Joe would tap out shortly after, almost in resignation, that if Hackney were to get up, he would be able to defeat him. Joe tapped out, but not to any hold or anything. He had just been punched in the groin a multitude of times. They're calling it no rules, but there's some fine print. No biting, no eye gouging, and back at UFC 1, groin strikes, you get fined. Then UFC 2 rolls around, fighters say nah, let's open that up, and boom, groin strikes are legal. Fast forward to Hackney vs. Sun, dude's locked in a guillotine, and what does he do? Starts hammering Joe-san's groin. 7, 8 shots, maybe more, just relentless. Sun taps out, fight's over, totally legal move back then. Now, here's the facts stacking up. This wasn't some instant rule changer. No memo went out the next day saying groin shots are done, but it lit a fuse. You got Senator McCain out there screaming about human cockfighting and trying to shut it all down. Then Leo Hindery from TCI, he's running cable TV, he sees the Hackney Sun clip and says, nope, we're pulling the UFC off the air. That's 94, 95, bam. UFC's in dark ages. 36 states ban it. Nobody's touching it.
Community outrage has led to it being banned in North Carolina, banned in Mississippi, banned in Oklahoma, banned in Kansas, and thrown out of public arenas in Denver and Brooklyn. It's a freewheeling brawl. There are only 2 rules, no eye gouging and no biting.
Hack's got his knee in his face.
Everything else goes, up to and including what's called dirty or street fighting.
Oh, that is allowed in this competition. That is brutal.
It's those moments of blood and heart-thumping violence that gets critics like Arizona Senator John McCain riled up. He wants this kind of spectacle banned.
We don't let roosters engage in cockfighting. We don't allow dogs to fight pit bulls. We don't allow human beings to go out in the street and engage in this kind of activity. We call it disturbing the peace, but we'll do this in a sanctioned manner in various arenas throughout the country. It's a sad commentary on American society.
What it was at the beginning was human cockfighting. It was. I mean, I've seen people repeatedly getting smashed in the face with a guy sitting on top of them. That's not a sport. That's a throwback to the Roman Colosseum.
Recently, State Senator Roy Goodman helped get an extreme fighting version of this called Battlecade thrown out of New York.
The problem is it's not a sport. It's an animalistic attempt by one human being with no protection and no gloves and nothing to try to maul and basically destroy another human being in a ring.
Dr. George Lundberg, editor of JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, says this is a sport courting a disaster.
There's no question about that the hazards are extreme. The hazards to soft tissue and skin are the greatest.
Zoom to UFC 12, 1997. Weight classes drop, fish hookings out, things are shifting. By 2000, California's Athletic Commission lays down the unified rules, and there it is. No striking to the groin. That's locked in, standard UFC protocol now. Hackney's moment? It's not like he walked into a meeting and rewrote the book, but the numbers don't lie. This fight was a neon sign flashing, "We need rules." It's in the highlight reels critics used to trash the sport, pushing that pressure till the UFC had to clean it up. Hackney even said later he'd fight different under today's rule setup. So the data's pretty clear. No direct Hackney rule, but the groin shot chaos, it's a giant domino that helped the UFC get into the regulated game that we have today. Joe's not done though. He bounces around, tries K1 kickboxing in 95 against Kikuta. He's throwing body shots, knees, even drops Kikuta. But then boom, high kicks, punches, Joe's out cold. Fast forward to 2002, he's 0-2. Extreme pancreation. He's facing Joe Moriera. Takes a shot, starts bleeding, and just quits. Just quits. Ref calls it a submission due to terror. That's apparently an actual ruling and genuine MMA unicorn right there. Then Pride. Facing Nakajima. Gets slammed on his head, taps out again. 0-4, Joe. Joe's career was four of the strangest fights there have ever been. 4 losses and not a single win to his name. He then dabbles in pro wrestling in Japan, having a go against Hashimoto. Has one of the most ridiculous entrances for Hustle. Though the entire thing at the time, it's chaos, you can't look away. Joe's son may have not won any fights, but he had won plenty of followers, and that had opened the door to the next chapter of his life. Joe's son found himself in show business. He was given roles in The Joshua Tree with Dolph Lundgren, Bad Blood, and The Shoot Fighter, but most famously, he portrayed Oddjob in the Austin Powers movie. Joe had taken what was a floundering career in fighting and possibly used his connections well enough to turn it into a decent enough acting career to not have to get punched anymore. For a guy with no wins, it seemed like Joe's son had actually come out of the UFC bout the true winner. The fame, the money, and the clout were all going his way. Hackney, on the other hand, he had another bout at UFC 4. He would advance in the tournament, and this time without injury or needing to step out.
Tonight, representing White Tiger Kenpo Karate.
Hi, my name is Keith Hackney. I'm from Roselle, Illinois. I train at Saviano's White Tiger Kenpo Karate in Addison, Illinois. And I'm back at UFC 4 to test my skills.
Unfortunately, the next guy in the bracket was a prime Royce Gracie. If you know anything about the early UFC, then you know how this fight played out. In Hackney's defense, he put up a decent effort, but the Gracie riddle just hadn't been figured out yet. That wasn't the end though. Hackney would have another fight. Ultimate 1995, December 15th, Denver. It's a murderer's row of past champs and killers. Keith draws Marco Ruas, a Vale Tudo legend, supposedly 300-0. His leg kicks make him a candidate for most efficient human buzzsaw. Keith's tough, but Ruas sinks in a rear naked choke at 239. It's over. With a 2-2 record, at 37 years old, Keith hangs it up. Both of them, only 4 fights apiece, and both changed things so significantly due to the fallout that many people will deem this fight as one of the worst of all time. I disagree strongly. Early in the story, we told you about how Joe had gotten with some bad crowds. That was no exaggeration.
You know who was never really nice? I don't know how much time you spent around him, but I'm just thinking about like sort of the most notorious MMA criminals. I mean, to me, Joe Son probably is the top of the list, right?
I spent a lot of time around Joe Son. Joe Son pulled a gun on me and my friends one time.
He was just a weird, bad, creepy dude, right?
Yeah.
Always. Even before,
like way back when in Huntington.
So he pulled a gun on you and your friends? What is this story? I've never heard this story.
There used to be this little club like in Huntington, and it was like in the corner of the shopping center. What was funny was like the yogurt. I don't know if you ever heard the stories of me working at a yogurt shop when I was in high school. Was literally 2 doors down from this place. But one of my friends had some drinks and going to this club or whatever. And you know how you park in a parking lot and they have those little islands with curbs around them. They're surrounded by the little curbs or whatever. So he's walking on this curb and he's been drinking a little bit. So he kind of lost his balance. Excuse me. And he accidentally fell against the car. Well, that happened to be Joe Son's car. And Joe Son happened to be sitting in it for some reason.
Do you remember what kind of car it was?
No, I have no idea. So he hops out of the car with the gun. You got a problem? You got a problem, bro? What are you doing touching my car? You got a problem? And my buddy's like, whoa, 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 whoa. So nothing happened. But yeah, you talk about a crazy guy. I mean,
like he wore this, like a G-string.
Like a G-string.
And he wore a G-string and he had like eyeshadow, right? He had like this crazy eye makeup on. But I just remember the bus ride over there. I don't know if you remember this, but Tiki, Tiki Gozin. I mean, everybody knows Tiki. Everybody loves Tiki, right? Tiki Gozin. He was sleeping in the back of the bus. And Joe Son just started like put his face super close to Tiki's face and sort of like was looking at it and like sniffing around his face. And he just started licking the side of his cheek. And I'm like staring at like Joe Son doing this. I'm like, this guy is mentally disturbed. And I kind of like looked at Boss Rutan, and Boss would be like, no, this guy's not right. Like everybody was like, stay away from Joe Son. Right. Really stay away.
Christmas Eve, 1990, before the UFC, before Hollywood, Joe Son and his buddy Santiago from school kidnap a 20-year-old woman in Huntington Beach. When they are finished, Joe tells her, it's Christmas. This is your lucky day. They let her go in the middle of nowhere, blindfolded without any pants. Case goes cold for 18 years. Joe's out there, fighting, acting, living like nothing happened. Then 2008. He's nabbed for some minor vandalism charges, has to give a DNA sample as condition for his probation, and it comes back a match for the case. October 2008, they arrest him.
19-year-old woman was attacked at her apartment complex in Southern California. For 18 years, her case remained unsolved until a stunning twist in the case. Correspondent Aaron Moriarty shows us how one of the suspects turned out to be a Hollywood actor.
I've been referenced as Jane Doe for many years. I was kidnapped, I was tortured, and I was left for dead. He slammed a gun to my head, and he's just like, in my ear, I'm gonna kill you so bad, I'm gonna throw you off the cliffs.
Victoria was thrown into the backseat of a car and repeatedly sexually assaulted. But she fought back, even lying to her attackers to gain sympathy.
I remembered saying that I had a kid, I had a baby. And I just thought, did they buy that? Did they buy that?
After what felt like hours, Victoria was finally released. Detective Don Howell was assigned to the case.
I set everything else aside to work this one.
There was hope. Investigators had DNA evidence that yielded profiles for 2 men.
I knew we'd get these guys. I was in a 90% certain range that we'd get them real quickly.
It didn't happen. The case went cold. And then
I received a phone call that I waited for 18 years.
I said, yeah, we got him. We finally got a DNA hit.
The DNA came back to a man named Joseph Son.
This is scary. I can't tell you something I don't know.
Well, you do know.
And you say you have this evidence,
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary.
But then investigators made a surprising discovery. Son was an actor with a role in a Hollywood blockbuster, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery.
I had his movie sitting on my rack. I thought, are you serious? He's in my home?
But before trial, Deputy District Attorney Eric Scarborough made a sickening discovery.
It was like my stomach had hit the floor.
The statute of limitation had run out. Now scrambling to save his case, Scarborough found a glimmer of hope.
Why don't I charge torture? Because torture carries the possibility of life imprisonment, there is no statute of limitations. There was still going to be an opportunity to bring Victoria justice.
Statute of limitation dropped some of the charges, but August 2011, guilty of torture, 7 years to life. It's not my favorite sentencing ever, and like most, I wish he would have gotten a lot more time thrown on it. Well, we did not go wanting. Joe would get into an altercation with a bunkmate and murder him. This would secure him a much longer stay at his new home.
An incarcerated actor who's probably best known for his role in the movie Austin Powers was in front of a judge once again today, this time facing charges that he killed his Wasco State Prison cellmate. Joseph's son played one of Dr. Evil's henchmen in the first Austin Powers movie. He's accused of killing his cellmate, Thomas Graham, 2 years ago.
I got locked up for like some street fights when I was like 19. A 9-month little thing at the county jail right there. And so yeah, Joe's son was my bunkie up top. He couldn't handle being there with the other inmates and stuff and general pop, so he kind of he was rolling around and in feces all night long. I think just trying to act crazy, so he got rolled out to a psych ward or whatever.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You want to act crazy, put poop all over yourself.
I was going to say, chew off the tip of your finger and just start drawing on the wall.
You put poop on yourself.
Another 27 years were added to his sentence for it. What about Hackney?
My name is Keith Hackney. Fought in the UFC 3-4, Ultimate 95.
Well, after his fighting career was over, he just went home and back to business. Keith enjoys talking to fans, but never sought out any fame or clout. He runs a small dojo, ran a business, and the hand he broke on Yarborough, well, he's ready to use it to give out a handshake to anybody that remembers. At the time of the bout, a lot of people had a lot of feelings towards Hackney. But looking back now, I'm pretty sure seeing him punch a scummy little goblin in the nuts until he can't take anymore could be one of those fights you just skip for whatever reason. But for me, and many others, it's one of the most poetic and majestic finishes in MMA history.